All right. Hello, everybody. I am not Ethan, but I hope to be, I don't know, a good stand-in for Ethan tonight. So for folks I don't know, I'm Katie. I am super excited to be here hosting community conversations tonight. We will give folks just a second to come in and to get settled. And again, I know I'm not Ethan. I know folks will be disappointed, but I'm so glad to still get to be here with y'all tonight and to chat about all of the things. And I already see Beth sharing in the chat about not alone notes, which is so awesome. You already sent out 5 holiday cards. That is the best. I sent some holiday cards out for notes of hope. That is so awesome. And I know that folks who receive that, it's just going to mean the absolute world. So that is just so awesome. What an awesome value-driven thing to do and to plug in with Not Alone Notes, who we absolutely love. And I see Nathan, hello from Athens, Georgia, and Spence, hi Katie and Beth and Nathan, and just so excited to start to see folks. And I've seen the numbers going up as people are popping on. Selwyn, so good to see you too. And you know, I kind of have a topic for tonight, but I'm kind of open to whatever direction we want to go. I'm trying to be more flexible the way that Ethan does on these community conversations. And I see Richard from Massachusetts. Hello, so good to see you. So if there are folks on here that I don't know, again, I'm Katie. I am an ordained minister and an interfaith chaplain, and I have OCD. I work at the intersection of faith and OCD also, and do a lot of work with clinicians and clergy to kind of bridge the gap there, and run an organization called Stick with the Ick, but also do a lot of work with the IOCDF, both volunteering and sharing as an advocate. And I'm also, shameless plug, putting on the Faith and OCD conference with the IOCDF next week, which we hope everybody signs up for. We can talk about that tonight too. But tonight isn't just about faith and OCD or scrupulosity. It's about really lived experience with OCD. Ooh, and I see more folks jumping in the chat. So good to see everybody. And I even see a hello from Maryland, which is actually where I'm from, even though I live in Atlanta now. So again, just so glad to see folks. But tonight's all about really you. It's community conversations. It's about being able to chat in community. And as we move through, I encourage folks to plug in and to connect with one another, but also to drop questions that are interesting to you in the chat. And of course, other people will offer support as well. But I'm happy to answer literally anything that comes up for you. So I'm going to go into some of our quick disclaimers really quickly, and then we are going to go ahead and jump into our live stream tonight. So as a quick, I didn't pull up our disclaimers beforehand. That probably would have been a really helpful thing to do, but I have them now. So this live stream is educational and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please work with your provider or contact a local clinician. You can use the IOCDF's online resource directory at iocdf.org/find-help to locate a trained clinician near you. I'm sure we'll talk about that resource more tonight too, because it's literally one of my favorites. But we also want to note that the International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. So if you're ever in crisis or feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. Or you can also access online at 988lifeline.org. Finally, in our time together tonight, it's all about community. So we want to create a safe space. We want to be kind and respectful to everyone, because at the end of the day, this is all about us being here on the journey to support one another. But always a note that this is being broadcast on several social media platforms at the same time. It's also being recorded. So we want everybody to keep that in mind as they comment and as they plug in with one another. So yes, let's plug into all of the things. And yeah, so there's still so much misunderstanding of OCD in a lot of faith communities. It's literally one of the reasons we are having the Faith and OCD conference next Wednesday too. So I'm going to try not to go off on a tangent about that. But if folks want to know about the conference, I'm also happy to talk about all of the programming for that and would honestly love to have y'all invite faith leaders to that too, because we put together tracks where clinicians can learn about really diverse faith traditions. We have kind of a whole interfaith literacy component. We have a ton for individuals with OCD and families and kids and parents, but also a whole component for clergy to be able to learn how do we offer support without reassurance, and how do we get rid of maybe some of those harmful stereotypes about OCD and scrupulosity, which is super, super important. And love, Lana. Hi. Just so glad to, if I miss saying hi to anybody, I'm sorry, but hello to everyone. So incredibly glad to see y'all tonight. So feel free to go ahead and start loading up some questions in the chat. I see Beth already has an awesome one, and we can talk about that too. And is this question considered being reassured? Okay, well, we can assess that. Actually, I want to ask you. So I'd like to ask everyone how we go out and do day-to-day things without worrying about getting COVID or long COVID. Is a mindset, or something happens, we'll deal with it then. Beth, you can tell me, like, is that question, so before I answer, maybe you can plug into the chat and let us know, is that question coming from a place of wanting reassurance, or is it genuine curiosity? And I always say, gosh, anything can be compulsive, right? We talk about this a lot and stick with the ick around scrupulosity, but it's all about the function. And Liz Mackingvale, who you see on a lot of these IOCDF streams, always says, what's the function? I say, like, that's the real WTF. What is the function? And we can really think about what the function of our question is. Is it because curious and I really want knowledge as I step forward? Or is it because we want to be reassured? Is it because we want to feel better? Is it from a place of fear or guilt or shame or anxiety or urgency? Or is it from a place of meaning and genuine curiosity? So Beth, you can totally tell us. Curious how everyone deals with the threat because it's still here and dangerous. Yeah, Beth, I'm happy to answer that, and then other folks can plug into, and then I'm going to share some stuff with y'all tonight that I actually think kind of applies to this too. I will say, for me and Beth, I know this has been something that's been tough for a long time, kind of through the OCD journey. It really is kind of that mindset of, if something happens, I'll deal with it then. I've had COVID a few times. I was really terrified of that at the very beginning. I was working in education and as an educational chaplain. And at the time, we were actually one of the few schools that was open through a lot of it. And that was really tough. And especially actually at the time, Ethan and I were just starting to date. And it was really tough for him because he was working with a chaplain and an educator that was in person with kids during COVID. So I was really fearful of that. I was as careful as I possibly could be while still stepping forward and doing my job and offering support to kids, and I mean, all of those different things. But I eventually did have it a couple times, two times, maybe three times. I don't know if the third time is correct or not. And I would say, while it wasn't fun, I have absolutely zero regrets. It wasn't because I wasn't, being careful, but it is because I was living my life. One of the times that I got, actually both times were really kind of fun trips. One was Ethan and I went to Disney, and the other time was on our honeymoon, where we got to take a honeymoon redo without COVID. But I think often OCD makes it feel, it might take something that, yes, really can be scary, like COVID or anything else that's significant to us. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more tonight. And it kind of heightens it. It jumps to the worst case scenario and says, but if this worst case scenario happened, I wouldn't be able to handle it. So I'm going to protect myself right now from that worst case scenario. But the reality is, it kind of keeps us stuck in a space where everything that we care about in our life is being taken away because we aren't actually getting to live that life. And Ethan, I promise I'm not going to quote Ethan all night, but Ethan used to always say to me, I would rather risk all of the scary stuff coming true than give up this life that I have right now. And I think when it comes to things like COVID, that's really how I've kind of approached that. It's like, if something happens, I'll deal with it then. I'm of course going to be cautious, and I'm going to do the best that I possibly can. But I want to continue to be able to live my life. And the alternative is something that I'm not willing to lean into. I want to be able to live this big, beautiful, awesome life. And I so get that, Beth. And I think that that can be super challenging. And I think OCD can make the argument about anything, right? OCD can make the argument that getting into a car is too dangerous. OCD can make the argument that walking down the street or going into the city is dangerous. I think OCD can find a way to do that about anything where, yeah, like uncertainty feels really scary. And we can say, but that thing really could happen. That's what I always said with my OCD. And yes, and also, the really scary thing of us not living our life is already happening right now. That's the reality. And Ethan, again, oh, not to quote Ethan again, but always says that, OCD will take away our life long before all of the other stuff. But I know that's really, really hard, Beth. And we're here for you. And I would love for others to plug in into the chat and kind of share with Beth how they navigate. Um, so, oh, and I see this awesome question from Shelby too. Do you think? Okay, I'm gonna pull this up, and then I'll bring up some other stuff too. Do you think that once a person kind of gets a grip on OCD with treatment, it's then okay to talk about trauma and bad things with the therapist, or will that cause OCD therapy to be worthless? Shelby, thank you so much for bringing this up. And so I think OCD, I want to go ahead and name, loves to, and Beth, absolutely. I hope that's helpful. And just, we love you. And I want to say that, the push that me and Ethan always give you is because we believe that you deserve to be living your life, regardless of what OCD says. And the world deserves you. So we are always cheering you on. But Shelby, with this question, I think OCD jumps to some pretty big extremes, right? It goes all or nothing really, really fast, where it says, okay, this is OCD treatment, so I can't talk about anything else, or it'll be worthless, right? Worthless is a really big word. And it says, anything else is bad, right? But I think there's often lots of things that come up in therapy that are significant to work on, right? And I think absolutely it's okay to talk with your therapist about challenging things that have happened, and sometimes even trauma and OCD can go hand in hand. And I know sometimes OCD therapists will even recommend that someone see a trauma therapist so they can do prolonged exposure or cognitive processing therapy alongside treatment. And yes, with OCD, we don't want to get really into the content of the intrusive thoughts. But I think that OCD might go so far in latching onto the treatment to say that means you can't talk about challenging things ever. And that's certainly not the case. And Shelby, I want to say super, super honestly that for me, after moving through OCD treatment, when I was able to really function and get my life back, actually, I was finally in a place to be able to address trauma and some challenging things that had come up for me. I will say there are some aspects that I'm addressing now, years after OCD treatment. And it came from sharing with my provider initially as I was doing better with OCD that there were still some things that were really tough for me about my past, and her helping navigate, well, where is this OCD that we don't want to give attention to the content, and where is it really valid for us to recognize that trauma is really challenging and we're deserving of treatment and support as a human. So Shelby, I just want to name that you can talk to your therapist about that. It is so okay. And of course, they can help you navigate if OCD is getting intertwined in that, but you are so deserving of support in OCD, but also things outside of OCD. And that's one of the reasons we also have interdisciplinary teams as well. So you are deserving of support in all of the areas. Okay, y'all. So the topic, I have another question. I keep like getting started on the topic I brought, but I would rather answer y'all's questions. So keep rolling those in. And I have my topic as a backup for us to get into. So I'm trying to let go of compulsions, but I'm having a difficult time doing so. Is trying to let go of all my compulsions all at once the wrong way to go about it? What an awesome question. And this is another place that, right, we can see a little bit of all or nothing kind of stuff coming up, which OCD loves to latch on to treatment too, and to make it feel like we have to do it perfectly, or we have to let go of every compulsion right now. And I think sometimes there's gray. And I think sometimes trying to do all of the things at once, whether it's trying to do the biggest and hardest exposure or trying to get rid of every single compulsion at one time, can feel like too much. And sometimes we end up struggling or wanting to give up. And so I'll give an example for me is early on in a treatment years and years ago. I tried to do like the biggest and hardest exposure and was like, and I'm not going to do any compulsions. I'm just gonna white knuckle through this thing, right? And it didn't last very long. Ended up actually doing a lot of compulsions, a lot of sneaky ones, a lot of mental ones. But I think that especially if you're working with an OCD therapist, from the exposure standpoint, they can help you build a hierarchy where you build up and are practicing not doing compulsions around those particular exposures, so that as you build up, yes, eventually the goal is to get rid of all compulsions, but it can kind of be in a tiered way, where when we start off with biggest exposure, get rid of all compulsions, sometimes that's too hard. Sometimes that's too much. I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I think, again, if you're working with a treatment provider, you can talk to them about this. But I think from the compulsion standpoint, you can also think about, well, what are some small manageable steps? What does it look like for me to do a few less compulsions today? If that's in the physical sense, it might be, I'm only going to do this thing this many times. If it's in the mental sense, it might be, hey, 5 times today when I catch myself ruminating, I'm going to make the effort to come back. Maybe it's saying, hey, I know that it's really hard for me to not do this compulsion, but I'm going to start by delaying it 5 minutes. All of those things and kind of giving yourself a tiered approach or working with a provider to do that can help you start to have little wins so that you can build up. Because we want you to get to the place where you aren't doing any compulsions. But gosh, doing that cold turkey and all or nothing can be super intense. And you get to give yourself kind of grace to build up to it. So I hope that's helpful. And if you need any other clarification around that, feel free to drop that in the chat too. Okay. All right, y'all. So the topic I brought tonight is something that's been coming up a lot this week in Stick with the Ick and on my Instagram. And that is, but this time is different. But this time is different. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat too. The topic I want to talk about is, but this time is different. And that way I can put it up on the screen too, if it lets me. Okay, but this time is different. Okay, so what do I mean by this? I want to say OCD often likes to tell us, this time is different. This theme is different. This obsession is different. And I think that is one of the things that often keeps folks the most stuck, whatever their theme is. And I want to share with you, some of y'all have probably heard me talk about this a bunch and are like, oh gosh, Katie's going to go down this metaphor again. But this is my favorite thing when we're talking about OCD, when we're talking about themes that it latches on to explain it. And that is ice cream. Y'all, I love ice cream. And OCD is like ice cream. I don't love OCD. OCD's ice cream is kind of gross. And I really believe that OCD is really nasty ice cream that happens to come in a lot of different really gross artificial flavors. So here's kind of the catch. All of those different gross flavors are the same old OCD. They just kind of taste like different stuff because there's some different artificial flavoring in there. But the strawberry OCD, the chocolate OCD, the banana OCD, whatever it is, all the same stuff. It looks like different themes, different subtypes, right? But all in the same nasty OCD ice cream made up of just artificial stuff. But the stuff that we get stuck on tends to be the things that are the most important to us. So I'll often hear from folks like, okay, well, I could accept uncertainty or embrace uncertainty about literally anything else, but not this thing. Like, why am I stuck on this thing? And always the big answer that I have is, well, you're stuck on this thing because that is the one thing that you don't want to be stuck on. And makes a lot of sense, right? Like, we are, of course, going to harp on and get stuck on the thing that's the most important to us, the one thing we don't want to get stuck on. And you might be able to even laugh about this a little bit. If you think about OCD themes of others, you might be able to empathize, but then you also might say, well, I can embrace uncertainty about that, but not about mine. And this comes up with me and Ethan a lot. A lot of his themes relate to things about him or his health. And for me, it relates to harm of others and moral scrupulosity and being a good person. So when I go to Ethan and say, like, but do you think everybody hates me because of that email that I sent? Or do you think I was super harmful? He's like, whatever, maybe not. That's no big deal. But do you think I'm going to die because of this procedure? And I'm like, I don't even know why you're worried about that, right? So it's so interesting because we really get stuck on the stuff that's the most important to us. But here is the kicker, right? OCD says this time is different. This theme is different. This is the one thing that it would be completely irresponsible for you not to pay attention to. And I'm curious, I want to ask y'all in the chat, is this something that you experience? Whatever theme you're stuck on right now or that you were recently stuck on, whatever what if question or intrusive thought, does your OCD try to tell you that this one is different? That this one's the one that you have to pay attention to, that you couldn't possibly just let it go and embrace uncertainty about this. And this for you might be about health. It might be, well, there really could be ramifications for me getting this illness. It might be about harm, where it might say, but it would be okay if it was for me, but like, I don't want to put other people at risk. It might be about faith, where it says, anything else would be okay, but this is about my eternity, right? So I'm curious again for folks, does OCD say this to you, where this time is different than every other time? And I think that can feel super, super tricky. And again, in the chat, I would love to hear from y'all, and I'll keep kind of plugging back into different questions, but I would love to hear, does your OCD do this? Does your OCD try to convince you that this time is different or special? And kind of what helps you pause and kind of take a step out of that and say, oh, you know what, this feels different, but I get to treat it the same way I do any other theme. I still get to use my skills and tools right here in this moment. So again, would love to hear from folks in the chat. I'm going to plug back in with this in a second, but I do see another question here, so I'm going to answer this also. Phyllis at 718 said, how does anyone combat doing tasks because the OCD perfection makes everything hard and unenjoyable? Yeah, Phyllis, I think that can be super hard. And I think that sometimes we'll end up avoiding, a task list, right? Because we know that as soon as we get into something, we are going to want to do it perfectly. We're going to want to check every box. We're going to want to get it, quote unquote, just right. And it's going to be sort of a painful process. And I hear this from so many individuals who care about really different things, even in the creative space. Individuals who music is really important to them, or that art is really important to them. They might not even want to start a project because like, oh my goodness, my perfectionism is just going to make this painful. And it really takes away things that folks love. I think with this used to be really challenging for me. And I think it was really through exposures and doing exposure and response prevention, actually practicing doing things imperfectly. And giving myself permission to still show up and enjoy it anyway. Now, sometimes that enjoyment was me acting as if, because I was really anxious about the not doing it perfectly. But even today, and this might sound really bizarre, but I intentionally will make a couple minor mistakes in emails throughout the day just to poke at my own perfectionism. I think Shala Nicely years ago in her book, Is Fred in the Refrigerator? I think she even noted that she left like 2 typos in the book intentionally because she wanted to poke at her own perfectionism. And I think that can be a really beautiful way to start, of taking 1 or 2 tasks that you're definitely going to do today and giving yourself permission to do it imperfectly and to show up anyway. And for me, over time, I've started to recognize, okay, maybe I can do a little more of this imperfectly. Maybe I can give myself space to not get this 100% right and to still show up and to still enjoy this thing. So I'm curious how that resonates with others. And I see Beth saying, have to stir my coffee a certain way before I drink it. Yeah, there can be so much time wasted where OCD says we have to do this thing right now. So Rob, so interesting. So this is an interesting kind of point, right? Well, health is different for me than any other theme. And so here it is for you, right? The irony is, as somebody who doesn't struggle with health anxiety, for me, yes, I know that technically that's a really significant thing, but for me, I am way less concerned about that than whether or not I'm a good person. And I think OCD can always kind of find that loophole in your core fear work, kind of as Spence said. We all have some kind of core fear. And I think OCD for many, like for me, it's like, well, yes, my health matters, but really, making sure that I'm a good person matters. And for others, I actually talked to somebody earlier today that we were using this example on the flip side where they said, man, I wish I had health anxiety because I have scrupulosity and I am worried all of the time about eternity. So they're like, what does it even matter in this life? I'm worried about eternity. So it will always find the loopholes, right? It really will. So I love that Spence said that. OCD tries to find the loopholes in your core fear work. Yes, 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 yes. And yeah, Beth, I never realized how many different types of OCD I had until starting to watch these videos, just grouped it into being OCD. And I think, I'm somebody who's, I think there's different thoughts and opinions on this. I don't worry too much about what the different types are, what they look like. I think things like subtypes are really helpful in people finding community or finding out that they have OCD and being able to recognize, oh, wait, it's not just this organizational thing that I saw on TV. It's actually all of these other things. So for me, it was actually reading about harm OCD in an article years ago that I was like, wait, this is OCD? This is like what I've been navigating since I was a kid. But I think once we kind of get treatment and get into community, that's why I kind of like to go back to that ice cream metaphor of, yeah, there's different types, but it's all the same OCD. The treatment looks very much the same. And a lot of times they aren't grouped neatly into different categories or even different ice cream flavors. They all kind of swirl together in this nasty OCD ice cream with some maybe pretty gross toppings. So I think it's actually more common than not that people have lots of different OCD themes. And they might even shift throughout their life based on what's important to them at different points or based on what's going on in society. I always say, I think I've had pretty much every type of OCD imaginable navigated. At one point, I really did navigate health anxiety and health related OCD, but I've navigated let's see, sexual orientation OCD, harm OCD, religious scrupulosity, moral scrupulosity, real event OCD, false memory OCD. I mean, anything you can give a name to, I've navigated at some point or the other. And I think so many of us are like that. And at the time, it's really been whatever I was stuck in at that time is what I thought was the worst possible theme in the world. And I would have given anything to have a different theme at the time. I love all the support in the chat. Yeah. So Rob, so interesting. I do have some checking issues, but I could leave a stove on all day. But if I come up against a health threat, then that creates huge anxiety. So it's so interesting because we are the exact opposite, right? Like the thought of, is my stove possibly on? It's like, I couldn't possibly sit with that. But if someone's like, hey, we need to do this potential test because of a potential health threat, I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Now it might sound super bizarre, but I think it's so interesting how OCD latches on in different ways. And for me, it's, well, the stove isn't just about me. It's about Ethan and it's about the cats and it's about my family. It finds these loopholes that we're talking about. Yes, 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 loopholes. Doesn't OCD ever get tired? I mean, it works so hard. Yeah, I wish OCD got tired. That would be really great. I think it makes us tired, but yeah, it seems like it doesn't really like to get tired, does it? But I don't like to give OCD that much credit either. And I'm also curious. I mean, this makes me think, even beyond kind of the topic that I brought up. Does anybody here kind of personify their OCD. And I think that that can be really helpful sometimes. And I know there's some people who don't like to do that and some that do. But I know some people name their OCD. For a long time, I called mine Frank based on an X. And there's something about it that helps separate it from myself, kind of a cognitive diffusion type tool where it's like, ooh, I'm going to look at the thought rather than from the thought. But personifying it can be really interesting. And some people look at it like a monster. Sean Shinnick with Draw Your Monster does a really beautiful job of that. I tend to imagine mine like this little kind of gremlin that is kind of annoying, but not super scary and follows me around and is trying to be helpful. And it's kind of raising its hand behind me like, oh, Katie, hello, excuse me. Excuse me. Hey, I just want to make sure you're safe right now. So I just want to tell you about this thing. That's kind of how I imagine it. I imagine it kind of having a running nose and like kind of dragging a blanket and trying to help me, but in a way that's really maladaptive and really annoying. I love all of these comments here. I'm the Baskin Robbins of OCD. I so resonate with that. All 31 flavors. Oh my gosh, y'all are the best. How do you, this is a great question. How do you deal with the real event OCD affecting the ability to feel proud of your work? So Brian, you can tell me if this is kind of what you're referencing with this, but I think this one probably was one of the hardest for me, and maybe even is one of the hardest for me, where especially in kind of helping professional spaces where I've struggled with when I've made mistakes, because I'm human. We all make mistakes, and that's okay. But I've struggled with, well, because I've made mistakes, does that mean I can't be proud of myself as a chaplain? And I used to, from a real event standpoint, get really hung up on mistakes or even things that weren't necessarily my fault, that were real events that happened, and felt like I couldn't possibly be proud of my work or move forward or be excited about accomplishments. I'll be super transparent. Like, how many people are watching this? How transparent do I want to be? Be super transparent. This week, it came up a little bit for me in some ways where, so scrupulosity is like my life and work and research. And I was really excited. I signed a book deal this week. I got to share that with folks. I've been really, really pumped about this. And there was part of me that felt really proud and was celebrating. And there was another part of me where OCD started to go wild, and it started to latch onto any possible mistake I've made in my work, or anything that I've possibly done wrong, or that I've missed, or this, that, and the other. And, real events, even from 10 years ago, where it's like, well, maybe I messed up this thing. And I think OCD often does that to kind of take us out of the moment, to take us away from being proud of or being able to be present in those things that we really care deeply about. So I'll say, Brian, for me, how I deal with that is letting those intrusive, scary thoughts be there, and letting the discomfort be there, and giving myself permission to step forward with joy and excitement anyway. And sometimes that means acting as if. I love the concept of acting as if, and I think it's really different from masking. Acting as if is really for you. I'm going to act as if OCD wasn't in the driver's seat right now. If OCD wasn't here right now, I would feel really excited about this book deal. So I am going to act as if, and I'm going to be so pumped about it. And I'm going to showcase that. And often when we start to act as if, I think OCD kind of gets scared. And sometimes it gets a little bit smaller. Sometimes it cowers a little bit, and we actually start to get to experience that. So I want you to hear, whatever that is with real event OCD, you are so deserving of enjoying the work that you're doing, of feeling proud of yourself and your work. But I also know that can feel really, really hard. What are loopholes? Yeah. So what we were talking about with the loopholes is that OCD, and I'm like forgetting, because this was before the Baskin Robbins, that I really got tied up in here. When we were talking about loopholes, hold on. It's trying to find reasons essentially that this thing is more significant than everything else, right? That this particular thing that relates to your core fear is different. So for instance, like in this conversation, you might be able to say, oh, wait, yeah, no, this is all OCD. We're all experiencing really similar things, regardless of what the theme is. But based on your core fear, OCD will most likely find some kind of loophole to convince you that yours is worse, or that yours is more dangerous, or that yours is not worth risking. So for me, the loophole that it's always found, which is kind of jerky and mean, it's always used the fact that I care deeply about people and that I'm a chaplain. And my core fear is being a bad person. So my loophole has always been that it finds is you can't step forward as a chaplain today. You can't help people. And now at this point, you can't work with OCD unless you've proven that you're a good person. So it usually will find something like that. Or in the case of, like, we we're talking about COVID, the loophole would be, well, what if this thing really did happen? How could we possibly deal with long COVID? Or in the case of the stove, it would find kind of the loophole. I think the loophole, as I'm describing it, it finds almost the scariest thing that could possibly happen. And it presents that as the most realistic scenario. And it says, but if this thing happened, you wouldn't be able to deal with it. And I think that's kind of the loophole that it uses around the thing that's the most significant to you. And it keeps kind of presenting that over and over. For me, sometimes that even shows up kind of in images where I can see the scariest thing happening. And I'm like, well, how could I not prevent that? Right? So I think it uses that in a certain way. Okay, let me keep scrolling down here. Yeah, health, anxiety. Yeah, OCD really does work. So, I lost where I was. I don't know how Ethan does this. So Selwyn, I think it's different for different people. I'm kind of with you on this, though. I always say, OCD is OCD. That's why I go back to the ice cream piece. But I do think we can kind of find community around that, especially at the beginning, where we can recognize, oh, wait, okay, I am having this harm thought or this POCD thought, and I'm not the only one. And I think that can be really helpful. But beyond that, I think I have folks reach out to me all the time because I do a lot of work with scrupulosity and say, well, can you help me find a therapist that specializes in this particular OCD? And I always say, well, we just want to find an OCD specialist, because OCD specialists can really work with types or themes or whatever it is across the board. I actually now just call it manifestations of OCD, because it's just different masks that it happens to be putting on. Nathan, I think that is something really common for us to want. I've wanted that, or I did want that for a lot of my life. I wish they'd come up with a med that makes OCD go into complete remission permanently. That would be the same as a cure to me. I so get that. I really, really do. And I think, and I'm curious others, I'd actually be curious for Ethan to talk about this. Maybe I can get him to talk about this next week. But him and I did a talk, I think 2 or 3 years ago at the online virtual conference. Maybe it was even 4 years ago. It was a while ago, but it was with Kim Quinlan and Shala Nicely. And it was called No Cure, So What? Living a Joyful Life Anyway. And we talked about the fact that for all of us, most of our journeys, we said, I wish there was a cure for OCD. Like, I want this to be cured. I want to take a medication. I want it to get fixed. I want it to go away. And the kind of strange thing is that I really, really believe that we can get to a space with treatment where OCD, yes, I mean, OCD is chronic and it's still there, maybe a part of it, but where it's really not impacting us, where, of course, I would love to have a cure for other people that I work with and things like that. But I don't know that for me, I'm so tied to that anymore. And I think that's really hopeful, that we can get to a space where, where that doesn't feel like the end all be all, because OCD is so in the backseat. And I want to say that's coming from someone that, as of 2019, I would have, if somebody told me that I could cure my OCD by chopping off my left arm and lighting it on fire and hopping in a circle, I would have done anything, literally anything. So I think it's really interesting and also hopeful to be able to recognize, like, yeah, that would be so great. And also the treatments that exist, I really do believe we can get to a place not just of functioning, but really flourishing and living our life. And Liz Mackingale speaks a lot about that now too. And she really inspires me in the way that her messaging has shifted over the years. And even for me over the last 5 years, it's really shifted from talking about it in a way that is always really focused on being chronic to a space of yes, and we really can live a life that's not defined by OCD. And I think there's a lot of hope in that. Yeah, I love what Beth just said with the OCD piece. It's like a child having a tantrum. If you ignore them, they realize they're not getting any attention. It's how OCD works. Pay no attention and it gets quieter. Yeah, that's the whole point of not engaging with OCD. And initially, it might get a little bit louder, right? The same with a child who's throwing a tantrum. Initially, when you turn your back, they're going to scream a little louder, and then eventually they're going to give up, right? And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And it's the same with things like non-engagement responses, where initially when we say, "All right, maybe not," OCD is going to go, "Whoa, what are you talking about? Like, hello." And the more we don't engage with it, the quieter it often gets. Um, okay, so Spence, I am so glad you said this because that's actually pretty much spot on what I picture mine as and what I was kind of describing. And I always think about that, but then I get embarrassed to say it out loud that literally I picture my OCD monster as the booger dude in the Mucinex commercials. So Spence, like totally with you on that. Spot on. Love that. I just all of the things. Yeah. The booger dude in the Mucinex commercials that follows me around and sticks to me and tells me what I should do. Yeah. all of this. Y'all are great. Okay. Yeah, I feel that way too as I work as a writer, so I tend to obsess about mistakes or gray areas. Yeah. I think that totally comes up. And of course, as a writer and as a creative, I think OCD wants to take you out of that thing that you care about. It wants you to then critique yourself so hard that you don't actually get to enjoy the writing process or the amazing work that you're creating. So no, absolutely. Yeah. And Beth says we have to realize nobody is perfect. Making mistakes is normal and a part of being human. 10,000%. And I'll say, I think this is another place that OCD can really trick us, kind of going back to that theme again of, but this time is different. I'm going to be vulnerable and say that for me, I have always been able to say that it's okay for everybody else not to be perfect. But I think for me, it always has felt different. It felt like, but me, I have to hold myself to a different standard. Like I have to be way up here. Like it's okay if everybody else screws up and makes mistakes, but I have to get it right. I have to be perfect. I have to be morally and ethically flawless. And gosh, that's not realistic. It's not something I would never hold anyone else to that standard. And I think if you are feeling that same way as I share this, if you resonate with that, I would ask you, why do you have to hold yourself to a different standard than literally every other person? And I would argue that as much as OCD says you have to, you don't have to. It's okay to make mistakes. That really is what makes us human. It helps us to grow and learn and connect with others. I'm pretty darn sure that if I was sitting here and had never made a mistake in my entire life and was talking to you all and was like, yes, and my life is perfect and I have never screwed up and I know how to do everything right, y'all would not want to be on here with me. I think the viewership would drop significantly. It's not human. That is not how we're called to be or meant to be. And I see Cash in the house. Cash is here. Cash, you are late. I know it's because I'm hosting and not Ethan, but it's fine. It's fine. Just show up late to the party. All good. And Maria, I don't know what the advice was, but I don't know what I was saying at the time, but I'm glad it feels helpful. Ethan looks like Katie. Yeah, it's me. It's me, Cash. I told Ethan he couldn't do. No, I'm subbing for Ethan tonight, but he will be back with y'all next week. Oh, Matt, so good to see you. Thought you'd pop onto Twitch for a change. Thank you, Matt, for bringing so much light to the OCD community. We appreciate you. We really do, and appreciate just everybody here. Y'all are absolutely the best. I love this community. Cash, does anyone else have dream OCD? So you can clarify for me further down. You may have already, because I'm like way behind now in the comments. I don't know how Ethan keeps up with this, but I do, if you mean like OCD seeping into your dreams, I think that's incredibly common. I think it makes sense, especially if we're thinking about or ruminating about something throughout the day, that it would kind of seep in there. I know it does for me all the time, and it gets kind of extreme and strange. Ethan, very much so. He can talk about this with y'all next week, but we always say has high budget dreams because his OCD fears will get like blasted times 50. And as a former like actor in movies and now like director, writer, producer, his OCD blows up like full fashion movie in his brain for dreams. This definitely means, this definitely is something that's common. Yeah, as in my dreams are OCD too. Yeah. Oh, everybody's saying hi to each other. Everyone is wonderful. Da, da, da. OCD research. Yeah, OCD research. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on. We're actually doing 3 different studies on scrupulosity right now. So shameless plug. If anybody wants to get involved in any of that, would love to. Would love to have y'all participate. Oh, Chris did not resonate with me chopping off my arm and lighting it on fire and dancing in a circle to get rid of OCD. It's okay, Chris. I really appreciate that you haven't had that experience. That was just where I was at a certain point in my life. All good. We're fine. Yeah, I don't know how it's already was 7:45. Now it's 7:47. I don't know how these go so fast too. And I'm just catching up on the chat here. Yeah. Which foods, in terms of food worsening, so I see this question here. I'm not a medical professional, so I feel like I can't necessarily answer that. You can definitely plug in with the Ask the Experts, but I don't really think that there are particular foods that worsen OCD. I do think, however, what you're naming of fluvoxamine being effective, there are that medication for OCD alongside exposure and response prevention. That's considered kind of the gold standard first line treatment for OCD right now that you can check out on the IOCDF site under kind of that treatment page, which is really awesome. And what I always say with medication, well, again, I'm not giving medical advice, but I think it's really important to note that taking medication for OCD sometimes can seem super scary. And I'll go ahead and name from a stigma standpoint, just like I said that, oh, hi, Chad. So good to see you. Sorry, I get distracted and excited when I see people in the chat. But I think that just like I said, I tend to hold myself to a higher standard than everybody else. I also, I don't know, held myself to something different when it came to medication. So when I was working in educational chaplaincy, which was really my lowest point with OCD, I would tell all of my students like, oh, it is totally okay to take medication for your mental health. But I felt like for me, when my provider eventually said, hey, I think this would be really helpful alongside your ERP, I felt like I was failing. I felt like I was doing something wrong. I was scared of all of these different things. Scared of stigma as a minister. I was scared of performance as a runner. And while I don't share what medication I'm on, because I want everybody to talk to their psychiatrist and figure out what's best for them, medication actually became a huge part of my recovery. And I'm really open about that. And the way that I think about it is Viktor Frankl says that between stimulus and response, we have a space to choose. And I think of that as between obsession and compulsion. We get to choose whether or not we do the compulsion. But sometimes with OCD, it seems like that space is really small and almost like the compulsion comes instantaneously, right? So sometimes it's really hard to use our skills from ERP when it feels like that compulsion is just happening. What the medication can do is open that space up a little bit more. I was talking to somebody earlier today who actually said, whoa, it slows down a little bit. I feel like I have a couple seconds here after the obsession to choose whether or not I do a compulsion or use one of my skills and tools from ERP. So I think that can be a really, really beautiful, brave, awesome thing for you to lean into to actually be able to use your skills and tools. Okay, dreams. I love all this dream conversation. I love that. There's so much that's gone on. How do I even keep up with this? And Zach, I'm so glad. Thank you so much. You had such great questions. Actually, your questions like really got us thinking and kind of got the ball rolling, and I think encouraged other folks to ask questions too on the IG live. So thanks for being there and asking such great questions. Yeah, Viktor Frankl. Yeah, thanks, Spence. Okay, I think I hit all of the questions. Did I hit all of the questions, folks? If I missed any, feel free to drop some additional in the chat. I do want to ask, kind of going back to that theme that we started with, but this time is different. Right. So I think, we've talked about this a whole bunch. The fact that each time OCD kind of creates a loophole or says this time's different. How could I possibly let this one go? We've talked about that. But I think the other piece that comes with this, at least for me, is I tend to get really mad at myself when I fall for its trick again. After the fact, after engaging in a compulsion, when Cash, is Ethan okay? Yes, Ethan is totally okay. He'll be back with y'all next week, I promise. I'm just subbing for him this week. He'll be back next week. And do I not look okay, Cash? I am great. I'm a little stressed because there's a lot going on this week, but it's all really good things. I slightly overcommitted, and I slightly hate the person who's been putting together my calendar in November, and that person is also me. So, but no, I'm totally fine, and just glad to be here with you. Are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. Totally lost what I was saying. Oh yeah. So with that whole concept of this time feels different, right? I think for me, often when I fall into the OCD's trap again, or when I engage in a compulsion, afterward, I tend to get really frustrated with myself. I'm like, oh man, I knew that this is what OCD does, right? Go put yourself in the corner for a timeout, Katie. Yeah, that's what I need to do. I need to have somebody else manage my calendar and then put myself in a timeout. I tend to really beat myself up and say, but I know that OCD always makes it feel different. Why did I fall for this again? And I think that can feel really hard too. And I want to ask y'all, and I'm going to drop this question in the chat if folks want to answer this in our last couple of minutes. Inevitably, when we fall for maybe OCD's trick again, how do you show yourself compassion? How do you show yourself compassion when you fall for OCD's trick again? How can we keep? And so I want to hear what folks have to say about that. And yeah, Brian, scrupulosity studies. There's a couple different ones going on right now. So there is one that I'm working on with Baylor on the intersection between OCD and scrupulosity and challenging experiences in faith communities. So I can definitely send that to you if you're interested. And then there is another one that we literally just got IRB approval for this week around scrupulosity measures and research. So that'll be super cool. But also, so you can email me about those or shoot me a message on Stick with the Ick. But also, if you come to the Faith and OCD conference next Wednesday, I put together the schedule this year and really wanted interdisciplinary talks to be a really big focus. And one of our interdisciplinary talks is actually on research in scrupulosity. So a number of folks that are there, in addition to talking about kind of past group research, are going to be talking about current research studies that are going on right now and how to get plugged in. So I'd love to have you at the Faith and OCD conference, or feel free to shoot me an email or a message, and I'm happy to share some of the studies with you too and kind of what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to see if anybody answered this. Yeah, Beth, how can we keep falling for OCD's tricks? Why do we do this to ourselves? That's okay. So that's what it feels like, right? We tend to beat ourselves up with that. Absolutely. You actually did things stick with the ick. Yeah. When you had an intense intrusive thought today. Yes, Cash, stick with the ick. Love, love, love. Um, okay, so let me look at some of these compassion responses, and then I see the question from Zach. We'll lead back to you. I see self-compassion is hard because I often abuse it into avoidance. I think that's totally fair and actually super insightful to be able to recognize. Um, and we can kind of address that too. I have a thought about that. But then we have Selwyn says compassion is shown by being realistic and understanding. OCD compulsion can hit so fast your brain cannot logically stop the process. Yeah. Okay. So what I like to always think with this is that when we engage in a compulsion, we can give ourselves compassion without being satisfied. And again, folks who are in stick with the ick, I'm sorry, because you're probably so sick of hearing me say this because I say it all the time. But compassion without being satisfied. And what I mean by this is you can give yourself lots of love and say, man, I have OCD. This is really hard. Sometimes a compulsion just kind of happens. Like, totally okay. It's really challenging. And we can say at the same time, I care so much about myself from a place of compassion that I want to do something different next time. I want to set myself up to not do that compulsion. I want to push myself in this moment to not do the next compulsion and to kind of get out of this hole. That is compassion without being satisfied. So I think that's kind of the middle ground. That's the gray. So I think sometimes what we're describing with kind of maybe the avoidance piece is, I think, one of the examples is, so say I did a compulsion. If I just go, okay, whatever, I have OCD, I'm just going to keep doing them. That's not helpful. And honestly, that's not really self-compassion either. Self-compassion really is saying, hey, I can feel for myself and I want to do something different because I care about myself. Then the flip side, right, is also beating ourselves up. It's saying, why did I do that compulsion? I'm such an idiot. Oh, my goodness. Is that helpful, y'all? No, it does. It does not. For me, it sends me into a deeper hole. So again, I really love that compassion without being satisfied, of being able to say, oof, really hard. Totally empathize with my self for doing that. And also I care about myself enough that I want to step forward in a different way. And I think that can be such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yeah, to quote Kim Quinlan from a live stream where she answered a question I had, you can give yourself compassion, knowing you were only doing the best you could with what you had. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, hindsight's always 2020. We always were like, oh, I could have done this differently. It's like, no, you were doing the best. I show myself self-compassion by seeing a setback or lapse as a time of growth, learning that I've made progress in my recovery in the past and will continue to do so. We've got this. Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I really love this concept of when OCD pops up, or even when we experience a lapse, being able to say, okay, with this, OCD is out of its cave right now. I get to, kind of punch it in the face as I use my skills and tools. I get to use this opportunity to step forward. And I was doing a live stream earlier with Callie Warner. So for folks that were on that, you probably heard me talk about this a little bit, but I had some really tough stuff come up 2 weeks ago. And it has been a little bit of a roller coaster. Had some family stuff come up that brought up a lot for me. Really, yeah, gosh, probably one of the heaviest things I've navigated in a long time. And OCD got really, really, really loud. And I think, with that, one of the kind of beautiful things is I had kind of a neat opportunity to use skills and tools that I maybe hadn't had to use in a while. Went from honestly like crying on the floor to, like I need to get through this very real thing that's happening, and the OCD that's coming up around it. And I fought my butt off. And I will say that the rest of stuff with OCD that had been a little bit loud lately got so quiet after that. And it was that little situation and that lapse, like Matt said, that actually gave me space to take some really big steps forward. And there's something about that feels really cool. And I think that can be really hard too, but I think there's so much motivation in that, in those moments of, okay, if I use my skills and tools in this moment, I can make OCD smaller. So let's see. Okay, I know I said I was going to go back to the question Zach had before we got off. Where did it go? Here we go. Does anyone else get stressed when a clinician tells you that your anxiety doesn't seem managed? It's like, I want to be over this, but it feels like going back. Yeah, Zach, absolutely. And I think, again, I don't know the full context of this, or if this is your OCD specialist, or if this is another clinician. But I think that can feel really minimizing, especially when maybe you have been working super hard, and to hear from somebody like, okay, your anxiety doesn't feel managed, it feels like they don't see all of the hard work that you're putting in behind the scenes. I'll say for me, some of the more challenging stuff with that has been honestly with family, where when I have been working really hard in treatment and I've had family in different situations say like, man, really seems like your OCD is really hard right now. You're really stressed. I'm like, man, I've been working so hard. I thought like I was noticeably better, right? And I want you to know that that regardless of what a provider says or anybody else says, you are allowed to recognize the wins and the steps forward that you're taking. I so get wanting to be over this entirely, and it's sometimes feeling like we're taking steps back or like we're back at the start. And I want you to hear that wherever you are on the journey, you are so worthy of recognizing your wins and how far you've come. And I know everybody here, y'all are fighting your butts off against this OCD thing that sucks. It is such a jerk, y'all. And you are doing such a beautiful job. I don't know, I'm getting emotional, but no matter what anybody says, and no matter what your OCD says, like you're worthy of celebrating those wins. I'm glad folks are resonating with self-compassion. I totally agree. It can be easier to be nice, way easier to be nicer to others than to ourselves. I totally resonate with that. I've historically been a jerk to myself, but it's something that I'm strongly working on. And thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. We're all here for each other, and all on that journey together. And I'm really thankful for that. Okay, so it is 8:02, y'all. I don't know how this happened so fast, but let me check out. What am I supposed to say as a part of the closing? Did I have this pulled up? Sort of, kind of. Okay. So this live stream is one of many. You can see the entire schedule of future streams at iocdf.org. /peace of mind. And you can also view all recordings of past streams and watch our hosts. Oh, that was an old one. So totally ignore the things that I just said. You can watch all of our past live streams also on YouTube, Facebook, all of the different things. And I do want to plug for just a second, the Faith and OCD conference. Actually, I want to plug two things. OCD SoCal, the full virtual conference this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. If you haven't signed up, please do. I know I'm going to be there speaking on Sunday on scrupulosity, and then doing kind of the closing Ask the Experts panel. But if you haven't looked at the schedule yet, there are amazing folks presenting literally all weekend. It's going to be awesome. And then shameless or not so shameless plug, IOCDF. Yeah, here she goes with the sales things. Sales pitch for Faith and OCD Con. The IOCDF Faith and OCD Conference is next Wednesday. And I got a lot of questions about, no, Cash, it is a great conference. It is our 5th year. I am so excited to be working on this with the IOCDF, and we've worked really hard to make this incredibly, incredibly inclusive. We have, more faith traditions represented than I can possibly put into words. And we're starting off with a community keynote with clinicians, clergy, and individuals with OCD. Then we have population panels we have a group for clergy, for clinicians, for advanced clinicians, for individuals with OCD, for families, for kids and parents. And then we have interdisciplinary talks that have kind of everybody rolled into one about different topics that range from research to sex and scrupulosity to self-compassion and just all of the things. And Zach, we would love to have you at the Faith and OCD conference. And so one of the big misconceptions is that it's only for one faith tradition, or it's only even for people that are religious. And it actually isn't. Even in our affinity groups, I mean, gosh, I should pull up. So our last session, it's been a long day, clearly. Our last session is discussion groups by faith tradition. And if y'all are still with me, I'm going to read off to you what they are. And this has been a work of the last 5 years of trying to make this super inclusive. But we have affinity groups for and discussion groups for Protestant Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, atheism and non-religious, moral scrupulosity, taboo themes in faith communities, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, art and spirituality, spiritual abuse and religious trauma, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Baha'i, interfaith, Islam, and then a clinician case drop in. So we have groups for atheism, agnosticism, for folks who are religious, who are not religious, who are navigating OCD and faith and scrupulosity in any form. So I'm not religious. I just like ice cream too. Yeah, Cash, you can totally come. Yeah, down for a fellowship hall moment. I think maybe I might be a little partial because I've spent the last 6 months planning for this conference, but I think it's a fantastic conference and we would love to have y'all there. So go ahead and sign up. Our registrations were really starting to pump up today, but we would love to have y'all there. Oh, look, it's my mother-in-law. Hi, Liz. So y'all, thank you for letting me give a multi-minute shameless or shameful plug for the IOCDF Faith and OCD conference next week. I'm glad that so many of you are still watching as I ramble on and on. So I just want to kind of close by saying thank you all so much for just showing up tonight, for being in community and for plugging in with one another. I know this isn't like a Zoom support group, but I do like to do a checkout whenever I do one of these. So I would love to have folks, if you're still with us and plugging in, drop just 1 to 3 words in the chat of how you're leaving our community conversation tonight, because it's certainly not about me talking. It's mostly, I think, about what y'all are sharing with each other in the chat. So if you feel comfortable dropping 1 to 3 words in the chat about how you are leaving tonight. And I see, stay safe, y'all. Be strong. Absolutely. And I'll say I am leaving, I don't know, just I'm leaving full of love and compassion for this community, and just thankful for y'all. Folks can drop 1 to 3 words. I don't know. You don't have to. Well, if you don't, I'm going to give it like 20 more seconds and I'll sit here awkwardly. If people don't want to, it's okay too. Thank you, Matt. Connected. Appreciate that. Matt's throwing me a bone here. Beth, thanks for the love. Oops. Yeah, you can do 4. That's okay. I see inspired. Thank you. 3, 2, 1. Thanks, Cash. Thanks, Katie and community. All right. Well, maybe not in a Zoom format. The 1 to 3 words is a bust. Ready to Prozac. All right. Okay. Well, maybe my checkout wasn't super effective, but we're gonna sit with the discomfort around the perfect imperfection of that. So as we close, impressed. All right, there we go. That's a good one. Till next time. Yes. Thank you all so much for being awesome and for supporting one another. I hope to see y'all at FaithCon next week. And I think there is an Ask the Experts tomorrow, which I should know what it is. I'm sorry, but it will be with Chris and someone, and it will be awesome. And then Ethan will be back here next Tuesday night, and then FaithCon next Wednesday. So thank y'all for coming, being here, asking questions, sharing just yourselves with this community, and just wherever you are in the journey, I want you to know that there really is so much hope, and that regardless of what your OCD says, even if it says this time is different, you are so worthy of stepping forward, of using your skills and tools, and of moving toward the big, beautiful, awesome life that y'all were created to live. So thank y'all so much. Bye, everybody. Oh, now you get to watch me look for the banners. Oh, no. I think there's a closing banner up, which I am not going to be able to. Here. There we go. All right. Closing banner. Still talking. It's all right. I'm just going to wait for this to scroll through and just talk to myself. It's fine. We're fine. We're all fine. I don't know how long I'm supposed to leave this up. It's okay. I'm just keep talking. Bye, y'all.